many research papers in different prestigious journals and seminars. Photogrammetry and applications and feature extractions are her area of expertise. Moreover, she has also a life membership to have you here. And without a further ado, I request you to start the session. Hina ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. DP. It's my pleasure to be associated today with this lecture session series. And since the participants have already had an introductory lecture in the morning about the basic concepts of remote sensing, I will now be discussing about once we have the image with us, how do we extract information and do interpretational activities using images obtained from satellites or aerial images. We can have an interactive session once I finish my presentation at the end of the session for about 15 minutes, and then I can spend some time answering the queries of the participants. I need to finish at 2:10 at the scheduled time.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So I think we are almost on time. 12:40. Right. So I'll finish and keep 15 minutes for interaction and queries at the end. Will that be all right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So is my screen visible?
No, ma'am. Your slide is not visible, ma'am.
My slide is not visible. I have shared the screen. Now, pictures and image interpretation. I will begin with the basic concepts of remote sensing. In the morning session, you were being given an overview of the physical process of remote sensing. Now, remote sensing, as the name suggests, is a technique or a scientific method of taking measurements by not actually being in contact with the objects, being at a distance and still being able to take measurements about the object. Usually what we require is a source of energy. So the prerequisite is that we need a source of energy, and that source of energy sends signals towards the feature of interest. In this case, the feature of interest being the surface of the Earth. It could be any other planetary body. Right? So usually, since the sun is available as a free source of energy, we use the sun's energy for the electromagnetic radiations transmitted by the sun. These travel through the atmosphere, traveling through the atmosphere and interacting with the constituents of the atmosphere, reaching the feature of interest, that is the surface of the Earth, and then interacting with whatever land cover features they may encounter, and with after appropriate interactions like reflection or backscattering or emittance, this radiation travels back towards the sensor. Now all the radiation again interacts with the constituents of the atmosphere a second time, and the remaining signal reaches the sensor. There it is recorded as a signal or as a digital number, and in the form of a digital image it gets recorded. Then this data is transmitted to ground receiving stations where it is processed for error removal, etc. Some pre-processing steps are carried out on the data, and then it is disseminated to the user community for various applications that they may want to use it for. Now, since electromagnetic radiations are being used, we as users should be aware of the properties of the electromagnetic spectrum and how different land cover features interact or show their interactions on the image, and how their interactions are manifested on the image in the digital image will be studied in this lecture. So the spectrum, as we know, ranges from shorter wavelengths to longer wavelengths. The shorter wavelengths are gamma rays, X-rays, UV rays, and so on. And it ranges from these shorter wavelengths to the longer wavelengths, which include microwaves and also the long broadcasting radio waves. Now, there are several regions of the electromagnetic spectrum which are useful for the process of remote sensing. And as you can see here in this figure, shorter wavelengths, gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays. After that, we come to the visible portion. The visible portion is that portion of the spectrum in which human beings are sensitive to being able to see. We are not able to see in the ultraviolet range or the X-ray and the shorter wavelengths, nor beyond the visible portion in the infrared and the microwave. So the visible portion is a very small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, ranging from 0.4 micrometers to about 0.7 micrometers. And this small portion is the only region of the spectrum in which human beings can see, right? Beyond the visible portion, that is the VIBGYOR, the longest wavelength is red. So after the red comes the infrared. This is the infrared portion now, beyond the red wavelength of the visible section. And after that comes the microwaves. So the details of this must have been discussed in the previous lecture session. And different features on the surface of the earth or different land use, land cover features interact with these wavelengths in different ways. And these interactions are recorded in the form of a digital number on the digital image, which we see as reflectance characteristics or backscatter characteristics. And the interpreter's job is to look at these features and these manifestations or these characteristics on the digital image and interpret the phenomena that may have happened or the physical condition of the object based on the interaction between the feature and the region of the wavelength that is being used to capture the image data. How to do interpretation, we will go through in the course of the discussion. Now, image interpretation would be or can be defined as the analysis of remotely sensed images, and this would involve the identification of various targets. Targets here mean features or objects that we see on the image. For example, it could be built up areas, it could be roads, it could be vegetation like trees, agricultural fields, forest areas, orchards, so on, or any other water bodies, etc. These features could be, we can term them targets or features or objects. Now, these targets or features may be defined in terms of the way in which they reflect or emit radiation. Since the source of energy that we are using here is to take measurements is light energy or electromagnetic radiation. So how do these objects reflect or emit energy in a particular region of the electromagnetic spectrum is what we see as the digital recording in the form of an image. Now, objects could reflect more in one region, absorb more in one region, and so on. It would also depend on the physical condition of the object. Say, for example, whether a vegetation is green, whether it is healthy, whether it has enough water, or is it stressed in terms of water, or is it diseased vegetation, at what growth stage is it young vegetation, is it mature vegetation, and so on. So the physical condition of the object would also have a bearing on what we see on the image. Then radiation is measured and recorded by the sensor, and ultimately this is depicted as an image product. So this activity or act of examining the images to identify objects and to judge their significance is termed as image interpretation or information extraction, as we may call it. So we are basically using the image to extract some kind of information which would be useful to the user or the interpreter to solve a decision making issue that is at hand. Right? Now, the interpreter would be a specialist who's trained in the study of photographs or images, in addition to being a specialist in his or her own discipline also. For example, a geologist could be, an expert in geology, of course, and be using these images to make interpretations about geological aspects, say studying landslides or to study minerals and so on. Similarly, a person who's an expert in forestry applications could also use these images to map types of species or types of forests and to see how various applications related to forestry applications can be solved. And similarly for other applications. Now, before we proceed further to the actual interpretation process, I will quickly give you an overview of how digital images look like and what is it that we see on the digital image, what kind of information we can get from these. From the timetable and the schedule, I see that you also have a session on digital image processing. However, here in this session, we will be talking about information extraction using the manual method or the visual image interpretation method. We are not going to be using any software to do the classification or extract information, but we are going to be using elements of interpretation and either use a hard copy image, a printout, a photograph, a photographic printout, or we can display the image on our screen and use these elements to make interpretations. So basically, if I have an image, it gives me a pictorial representation of an object or a scene. Images, as I said, could be analog, that is hard copy, or they could be digital or soft copy. Now, digital images are made up of squares or rectangular areas, as you see here in this image, squares. And these areas or these cells are called pixels or picture elements. Now, each of these picture elements or pixels or cells are associated with a number, as you see here. And this associated number or pixel value is representative of the amount of reflected energy from the ground, meaning that this small area is the area that the sensor sees or images at one instance of time, and this is the smallest unit of the image, the pixel. And this number denotes the amount of reflected energy that the features in this small area reflected or emitted and was recorded by the sensor. Now, since satellite sensors can be designed to operate in different regions of the electromagnetic spectrum, each region corresponds to a band or a channel. So we can have a multispectral image which has multiple bands, each band corresponding to one region of the electromagnetic spectrum. So for example, I could have, say, a 4-band image in the visible and near infrared region, like the one I have shown you here. So this image has 4 bands, the red, green, blue, and infrared. Right? So 3 bands in the visible and 1 in the infrared. Now, a combination of these bands would be displayed on screen, or with a combination of these bands, I could take a hard copy photographic output and use that for interpretation. Right? Now, this kind of data is also called raster data, which is in the form of rows and columns. Right? Now, one more small point about the display of these images, that is here, since the display screens have a limitation of having only the 3 primary color guns corresponding to the 3 primary colors, red, green, and blue. So we have a red color gun, a blue color gun, and a green color gun. Now, since we have multispectral images which have more than 3 bands, now for displaying, we will be restricted to choosing any 3 bands and displaying them through the corresponding color guns. So out of these 4, I need to choose 3 and display them through red, green, and blue color guns. The combination of that will dictate what color I see on the screen. If I display the red through the red, the green through the green, and the blue through the blue, that is the red wavelength through the red color gun, and so on, green through the green and blue through the blue, on screen I will be seeing a color combination which corresponds to the natural color composite or true color composite. Now, if I change any of these, right, suppose I remove the blue band, right, and then I have IR, R, and G, and I display them through some corresponding color guns, say IR through R, R through G, and G through B. So then I have changed the true color composite, and now what I'm seeing on screen is a false color composite. Right? Now for interpretation, the interpreter is supposed to choose a band combination which will display his or her feature of interest in the best possible manner for enhanced or better interpretation. So suppose you are wanting to look at, say, water features, you will choose a combination which displays these features in the best possible manner. For a vegetation scientist would choose vegetation features, a combination which displays vegetation features in the best possible manner, and so on. Okay. Now, why, since we are used to looking at images in everyday life, why is it that we need to be trained about doing visual image interpretation when we are using these satellite images? Now, there are a few points of difference which if you keep in mind, you will get an idea of why we need to do this. The first point is that we tend to lose our sense of depth when we are viewing a two-dimensional image. Since in everyday life, we are used to seeing in 3 dimensions, or we are used to viewing stereoscopically so that we are able to perceive depth. Since whenever we use only a single image or a monoscopic view is taken, we will not get the 3rd dimension of height. Now, this sometimes creates confusions in the interpretational activity. Also, we are used to seeing things in a horizontal perspective, whereas the camera here is mounted vertically at a vantage point. So viewing objects from directly above provides a very different perspective than what we are familiar with. I can give you an example that if suppose there is if you are sitting in a classroom and I mount a camera on the rooftop and click a picture. So I expect to get a picture of the top of everybody's head. Now, if I distribute that picture to you or that image to you and ask you to identify all the participants or your classmates, I'm sure you will have some difficulty. Instead of, if I had given you a picture of, the normal photograph with their faces, right? So you would have seen more features and you would have quickly been able to identify each one of them. The situation is something like that. So we need to imagine how these objects that we see every day, like trees and agriculture fields and buildings, would look like when I get a view of these from a sensor which is getting a vertical view from directly above them. Then combining this unfamiliar perspective with a very different scale and lack of recognizable details can then make these very familiar objects that we see every day unrecognizable in the image. Now, also, since we as human beings are used to seeing or are sensitive only in the visible wavelengths, when imaging objects in wavelengths outside of this window, we are again not familiar with how everyday familiar objects would look like in different spectral regions or different wavelength regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. So something that you see every day, like the familiar tree or the road or the building, in the visible portion of the spectrum, if an image of this is given to you in, say, the infrared region, you would probably have some difficulty in interpreting. So interpreters need to make themselves familiar with how these features would look like in these ranges of the wavelength and what would be their manifestations on the image. So these are a few points that make interpretation of these kind of images different and probably unfamiliar. Once we get familiar with the activity, we will be able, the interpreters are easily able to identify objects and do the interpretational activity. Now, coming to the more technical part of the discussion, the data characteristics, that is the characteristics of the data, will dictate the kind of interpretation that we are able to do. So I believe that you've already been made familiar with these terms, that is the resolution characteristics of the images. This is what dictates how and what kind of information we will be able to extract from a kind of data set. So spatial, spectral, radiometric, and temporal resolution are four types of resolutions or data characteristics which define the kind of, or which dictate the kind of information that is that we can extract from these kind of images. Now, just to make a summary, the spatial resolution is the smallest unit that can be measured, that is the size of the pixel. So if I say that my spatial resolution or my pixel size is say 5 meters by 5 meters, or my spatial resolution is 5 meters, what I mean to say is that the size of the pixel, or on the ground an area of 5 meter by 5 meters has been seen by the sensor at one instance of time. And for objects to be distinguishable, they need to be at least at a minimum distance of 5 meters apart. So if there are two trees or two towers or two buildings at less than 5 meters, say 4 meters, they will not be distinguishable as separate entities on a data set which is, or an image which has a spatial resolution of 5 meters, right? It also dictates the amount of details that the interpreter is able to see on the image. So coarser spatial resolutions will have say size, say suppose I have an image of at 500 meter spatial resolution, 100 meter spatial resolution, and 10 meter spatial resolution. So the 10 meter spatial resolution will be the finest spatial resolution, the better spatial resolution, and the 500 meter one will be the coarser resolution. Then the second kind is the spectral resolution, which is that part of the electromagnetic spectrum in which we are capturing the image. So what are the number of bands and how narrow these bands are will dictate the spectral resolution. So how reflectance characteristics are going to be interpreted is dictated by the spectral resolution. So if there are two similarly reflecting objects, if that part of the spectrum in which the difference in the reflectance is captured is not in the bandwidth, then the distinction will be different. So suppose I have to distinguish between water and vegetation. Even a broader spectral resolution would make it, will be sufficient for me to do this kind of interpretation. But if I need to make a distinction between different species of trees or vegetation, then I would need a finer spectral resolution. Then comes radiometric resolution. This defines the smallest difference in energy that can be measured, meaning that if there are small differences in energy that are being reflected in adjacent pixels, is the sensor sensitive to measuring these small differences? That means the number, the digital number that is being recorded, what would be the range or what would be the number of grayscales, colors that the sensor is sensitive to measuring? How many number of grayscales or gray values or DN values will the sensor be able to measure in terms of small differences in energy, reflectance or emittance? For example, if it is 8-bit data, then the sensor would be able to see from 0, which is the smallest, to 255. right? 255 being the brightest and 0 being the darkest, and all other values will range in between. So an 8-bit quantized data will enable us to see 256 shades of gray color. Then revisit the sharpness of the objects will be dictated by this, how well the boundaries, we are able to mark the boundaries. Then temporal resolution or revisit time, that means periodic visit of the sensor to the same area in the same orbit. So time between two successive image acquisitions over the same area with the same geometric characteristics. So this would mean if we have temporally varying data at different time periods, we will be able to do a change detection study. So suppose I have data from say 5 years ago and I have data of the current date, I will be able to assess, compare the two and do some change detection and see what changes have happened in that area. Or maybe in the time of a disaster like a cyclone or a landslide or an earthquake, pre-event and post-event data will let the interpreter make an assessment of what kind of damage has happened, where it has happened, and what are the priority areas and so on. So disaster management, etc., would also require temporal variation in data. Right? These advantages I feel you will already be familiar with from the morning session. Remote sensing data is useful because it gives us synoptic view. It is a permanent record. We can see in different spectral regions at different spatial resolution, and it also gives us stereoscopic view with specific processing. We can do create three-dimensional views of the area and get to see digitally an elevation model and see in in 3 dimensions. Then at the end of the day, it turns out to be that this technique is more cost and time effective in terms of extracting information over large areas and probably inaccessible terrains as well. Right? So these are a few images of how spatial resolution would vary with pixel size. So 10 meter, finest, 30 meters, and 80 meters. So a low spatial resolution and a high spatial resolution image. Right? So this is the coarsest resolution and this is the finest resolution in terms of pixel size, spatial resolution. Spectral resolution, the number of bands. If I plot the band data like this with wavelength and amount of reflectance. So how many bands, number of bands, and how narrow is the bandwidth, right? So this gives us an ability to exploit the differences in the spectral signatures. If we are able to do that, then we have a high spectral resolution. Radiometric resolution, sensitivity to small differences in the radiation of the object that is being observed. So if I have only 2 levels or 2 quantization levels, and if I have more quantization levels, yes. Temporal resolution, how often is the repeativity? So change detection can be done using these. Right. Now, the next portion corresponds to a quantity called the spectral signature. Now, to identify what pixels correspond to what land cover features or classes on the actual terrain, we need to have an identifier associated with them. Now, the identifier would be one quality or feature which we are able to extract from the image and assess which pixels would correspond to which features on the ground, right? So, for example, when you go to a bank, we use your signature to identify who you are. So, spatial, spectral, temporal, and polarization variations on the image from the image could be used for discriminating these features from each other. Okay? So this would be called a spectral signature, and a spectral signature would be a set of characteristics by which an object on any satellite image within that range of wavelength can be identified. So spectral signatures are also used to denote the spectral response of the feature or target. Now, how do we do that? We do this with the help of a spectral reflectance curve. Now, this curve is a graph of the spectral reflectance of the object as a function of the wavelength. So now if you see here, wavelength is plotted on one axis and the percentage reflectance is plotted on the other axis. Now, if I take this dotted line, which is labeled clear water, right? So if you see this from 0.4 to about just before 0.8, right, micrometers, this is the visible and near infrared range. So clear water has very little, just about less than 5% reflectance in the visible portion. So that means it will be dark in its response even in the visible portion. However, as soon as it reaches the infrared section portion, all the radiation is absorbed. So water absorbs the infrared, which means on the image in the infrared region, water bodies will appear dark. Right? Now the physical condition of the object is very important, meaning clear water will display this characteristic. If there is some impurity or suspended material or pollutant, then this curve will show a change. The spectral reflectance curve will show a change in case there is a change in the physical condition of the object that we are considering. Right? So clear water shows this standard reflectance curve. Therefore, we will be able to interpret based on this spectral reflectance curve or spectral reflectance characteristic or spectral signature that there is a change, or it is polluted water, or there is maybe phytoplankton content, or there is suspended material like sand and so on, or any other pollutant, maybe an oil slick or something. Now, second feature here that we see is green vegetation. So if you see that here, there is a dip, which is an absorption dip, and then there is a sharp rise, right? So in the infrared region here, we see vegetation reflects around 50% of the energy. So bright characteristic or bright manifestation or bright signature will be seen on the image if the vegetation is green and healthy. So if in case it is diseased, or in case it is not green due to any other reason like growth, etc., or disease or water stress, etc., then that can be seen as a change in the spectral reflectance curve. So healthy green vegetation will show this standard curve. There are two absorption dips here. If you see, these two dips correspond to water content in the cell of the plant. So if for any reason the plant is stressed in terms of water, there is less water, these dips are also going to change, and this will reflect, and the interpreter will be able to see the change. Okay. So spectral responses in terms of reflectance and emittance curves and the variability of the spectral signatures let us evaluate the condition of the features and help us in identifying these features on the surface of the earth. Right? Now quickly we will go through different spectral signatures for different features, beginning with vegetation. So as I said, a general characteristic of vegetation is its green color, and this green color is caused by the presence of the pigment chlorophyll. This pigment reflects green energy more than the red and blue energies, and this gives plants their green color. So that is why in the presence of chlorophyll, here, the reflectance is more in the infrared region, and there are two absorption-free water is absorption dips here for free absorption in the plant tissue at 1.4 micrometer and 1.9 micrometer. These are characteristic dips. So in case the plant is water stressed, we will get an idea when we observe the reflectance curve. If it is not healthy and green due to if it is yellowed, the leaves have yellowed due to disease, or it is naturally not green, that is, it doesn't contain the pigment chlorophyll, or maybe if there is a change in the growth stage. So the physical condition of the object versus the wavelength region in which it is being observed will give us an idea of how the reflectance characteristic are going to change. So thickness of leaves, so if it is a thick leaf, it is going to reflect differently, and if it is a thin leaf, it will reflect differently. Okay. Similarly, the shape of the leaf, if it is needle shaped or if it is broad deciduous leaves, they will both of them reflect differently because there is a difference in the surface area from which the reflectance happens. Then growth stage, whether it is a young plant or whether it's a mature plant, right? So these characteristics, depending upon leaf maturity and the stage of growth, whether it is coniferous tree or deciduous trees, will all have different reflectance characteristic, and these can be interpreted based on the difference in spectral reflectance curves. So health of vegetation, as I said, if there is a patch of infected vegetation, this can be seen on by the help of the spectral reflectance curve. Similarly, if we take the soil feature, then again moisture content, presence of water. If it is dry, bare soil like this, it tends to give us a very bright reflectance in the visible portion and the near infrared portion of the spectrum, and this translates into a very bright feature on the image. So dry, bare ground with very little moisture or no moisture will give us a bright signature. If moisture content is added, then wet soil will give us a dark signature as compared to the dry soil. Now, increasing soil moisture will lower the reflectance, right? Also, organic content, iron oxide, all this if we add, then these will also reflect a change in the spectral reflectance. Structure and texture of the soil, that means whether how closely packed are the particles of the soil. For example, clay, is it clay soil or is it sandy soil? This will also dictate how much amount of moisture it is able to hold. So this will dictate how the spectral reflectance curve is seen by the user. So iron content affects the spectral reflectance, and also organic content, if you add manure and other things to the soil, decomposed organic material, this shows very low reflectance throughout this region. Similarly, soil structure and texture, as I said, so sandy soils tend to have low moisture content, and therefore they would have a fairly high and often specular reflectance. Hello?
Hello?
Yes? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes?
Hey. Hello?
Yes, please, I'm able to hear you.
Ma'am, you may continue. It could be a glitch.
I'll do that. Okay. Right?
Thank
So
you, ma'am.
whether it is clay soil or sandy soil, depending upon how much moisture it is able to hold, it will dictate the brightness or darkness as we see on the image. Then coming to water, again, which region of the spectrum? Water, as we saw in the spectral reflectance curve, absorbed all the energy incoming radiation in the infrared region, and very little, less than 5% of reflectance happened in the visible portion. So the wavelength, the depth of water, the deeper water will have darker shades, and shallower water, since it will be able to penetrate, the radiation will be able to penetrate to some extent and give us some reflectance, it will show some shades of gray. Suspended material, sand, etc., algae, etc., chlorophyll content. So if there are phytoplanktons or blue-green algae and other kinds of algal material on it, and the surface roughness. Surface roughness meaning if there are waves in the water due to wind activity, etc., or is it stagnant, standing water. So it will be a smooth surface in that case. So all these physical characteristics of the feature will dictate how the reflectance happens, whether it be in that region of the spectrum. So as interpreters, what we basically need to keep in mind is which region of the spectrum we are using for sensing or capturing the image, and what is the physical condition of the object compared to this wavelength region. This will dictate how we see the object or target or feature on the image in that region of the spectrum, that channel or that band of the image. Right? So this is how in the near infrared and the middle infrared, strong absorption happens and very little radiation is reflected or transmitted, right? So there is a sharp contrast in the land water boundaries because of this. Similarly, for snow, the factors which dictate the reflectance is grain size. So reflectance falls at all wavelengths as grain size increases. Then the thickness, as snow ages or becomes older, it tends to pack more tightly. So this results in decrease in reflectance. Whether it is melted snow, how much liquid water content does it have? That is, if snow starts melting, then it increases water content and hence reflectance. Then whether there are some contaminating particles present like soot or any other pollutant, it will reduce the reflection in the visible portion. So contamination or pollution can also be interpreted through this data. Now, please remember, I would just like to stress on the fact that even though we have multiple bands corresponding to different regions of the spectrum, if I display individual bands, I will see a grayscale image. Unless I display 3 bands in combination and display them through the red, green, and blue color guns of the display system, I will not see the image as a color image. So to be able to see in color, I need at least 3 bands of data in different wavelengths and be able to display them through the 3 primary color guns, red, green, and blue, and then I will get a color composite displayed. Now, you probably notice here that in different bands, different features are seen. So if you see here in the infrared region, the water and land boundary and the surrounding vegetation, because there is good contrast, optimum contrast between the two, we are able to see better the water and vegetation features. Since water absorbs all infrared and vegetation reflects highly in the infrared region, there is contrast between these two. So for interpretation, especially visual interpretation, optimum contrast is a primary characteristic that needs to be, the contrast needs to be optimum. That is the difference between if it is too bright, features become overexposed and we are not able to mark boundaries. If the contrast is poor and the image is dark, again we are not able to mark boundaries. So optimum contrast is desired. Now this is the true color composite and this is a standard false color composite. So now if you compare here, you will notice that vegetation features are seen here in green because it is true color, and in the shades of red in the standard false color composite. Water, this is dry sand, cyan color, and the built up regions are also in the cyan tone only. This is the water channel, all vegetation features. Similarly here. So built up area and sand are both in the same tone of light blue or cyan, because for the construction material has sand as a constituent. So the reflectance from here is similar to that of this region. So these are two similarly reflecting features. Even though physically they are different features, yet for reflectance characteristics are similar. Built up area and sand. Similarly, shadows and water bodies also show similar reflectance, dark. So a digital classifier, automatic classification, etc. Rule sets will have to be made which will be able to make a distinction between these characteristics. Otherwise, there might be a mixing of the classes. Right? Now I will quickly go through the next section, which deals with methods of image interpretation and how we use elements to make interpretation. So visual image interpretation and digital image processing or digital image analysis. The second part will be dealt with in the next lecture session on digital image interpretation. We will be looking at characteristics or features which help us in visually extracting or manually extracting information from images. So basically what will dictate how we do interpretation would be the application. Which application is it that we are trying to use the data for? With this, we will look at what sensors give us useful data to do this information extraction. And then depending upon that, we will look at data characteristics. What spatial resolution, what spectral resolution, what if do I need daytime images or do I need nighttime images? Do I need temporal variation in my data? Do I need very high spatial resolution images, or do I need very high spectral resolution images to do the interpretational activity, etc. Once I have decided that as an interpreter, I now need to look at these elements of interpretation which are listed here. So basically, the visual elements of interpretation are tone, shape, size, pattern, texture, shadow, and association. Now, when we talk about tone, this is the primary element of interpretation, visual image interpretation. And this refers to the relative brightness or color of the objects, or darkness, brightness or darkness, or in case it is a color image, then the different hues or shades of color. So if you see here, you see different shades of gray. So bright shades, gray shades, and dark shades. If we are able to make a distinction between these different shades, you will see that when one tone changes into another tone, at the boundary, we are able to mark an edge. Right? So this edge, if we are able to mark out, we will be able to mark the boundary of the object. Now change in tone corresponds to change in either the physical condition of the object or change in the object itself. So it could be a fallow field or and this darker one could be, a cropped field or one with moisture and so on. So variations in the tone also help us to, or allow us to make an interpretation about the elements of shape or texture and patterns of the object. So tone is the fundamental element for distinguishing between targets or features. Then shape refers to the general form or structure or outline of individual objects. Sometimes shapes can be very distinctive clue for interpretation. Now, for example, if you look at roads, the shape that will come to your mind would be linear shape. Then agriculture fields would be expected to be in squares or rectangular shapes, right? So man-made features are usually geometric features, whereas natural features could be, not following any fixed shape. Then size of object. Now, it is important to note that size of the object on these kind of image data that we are looking at or talking about, we need to keep in mind the spatial resolution of the data in mind. So, depending upon the pixel size, the same object on the ground in different images could appear in different sizes on the image. Then pattern. Pattern refers to the spatial arrangement of visually or visibly distinguishable objects on the image. Typically, we could say that an orderly repetition of similar tones and textures will produce a recognizable pattern. For example, if we compare uh, vegetation or trees in forested areas and in orchards. So in orchards, we will expect to see a pattern because it is a man-made feature, trees planted in rows, and that those rows and that pattern will be visible, and because they are evenly spaced trees will be visible on the image. Whereas a forest is a naturally growing entity and hence it would probably not follow any fixed pattern like the man-made feature of orchard. Similarly, urban features like if it is a planned colony, we expect to see a pattern. If it is a slum area or very densely populated area, we don't expect that pattern to be visible. So even though they will be tonal, the tonal variation will not be so much because they are both built up. In case of forest and orchard, they are both vegetation features. So tonal differences may not be there, but based on the element of pattern, we can make a distinction between these two features. Then comes texture. Texture refers to the arrangement and frequency of tonal variation, meaning how soon or how frequently does tone change in an area on the image. So is it a homogeneous area like this, same tone continuing for a large area, or does tone change frequently like here? So bright, gray, dark, and so on. So now there are distinctly two textures seen. One, I can mark out a boundary. The top, which is a rough texture, visually rough texture, and the bottom, which is a visually smooth texture. Right? So tone does not change. It is a homogeneous area. Here it is heterogeneous. Right? Changes frequently. The same tone continues for a large area. So texture is one of the most important elements for distinguishing features, especially in images taken in the microwave region. So rough textures and smooth textures, there are several other kinds of textures which we are able to distinguish on images. It is a very useful characteristic for doing digital image classification also. Then comes shadow. Shadows are usually taken as noise or occlusion because it hinders in interpretation. Wherever we have shadowed areas, features beneath the shadow do not have optimum contrast, and therefore it creates a hindrance in interpretation. However, shadows can also give us important clues at times related to the height of the object or if from the vertical perspective, we are not able to make out the shape of the feature under consideration, the shape may be at times visible in the shadow on the ground. Also, rough estimates of heights of objects can be made with the help of shadow and a few other information if we have, like the sun angle, etc. Then we can use this information and do a simple trigonometric relationship and roughly calculate the height of the object, right? Even if we don't have a stereoscopic data for that area. Then comes the element of association. Now, association is a relational character, meaning that this takes into account the relationship between recognizable objects or features in the proximity of the target or feature of interest. For example, we usually associate certain features with certain other features. For example, if I take built up as an example. So if I have a commercial property or an industrial area and a residential area, so tonal variations are not going to be many because they will be showing similar tonal variations. However, industrial areas or industrial properties or commercial properties will be associated with features like tall chimneys, storage sheds, chemical tanks, etc. Whereas residential areas are more likely to be associated with parking lots, playgrounds, and so on. So residential areas and commercial properties, even though they are both built up class or can be clubbed in the category built up, they can be distinguished based on the associational characteristic. Also, suppose bridge and a road, if the construction material is same for both, tone is going to be seen as the same character in similar fashion on both for both features. However, that portion which is associated with a water body would be called a bridge, right? Ships, etc., will be associated with water bodies and so on and so forth. So associational characteristics sometimes give us very important clues as to what the feature might be, and this helps greatly in the interpretational activity. Right? Again, a small comparison between the true color and the false color to make you familiar. Usually, the true color is depicting the exact same color or the natural colors. So green is vegetation. Here in the standard false color composite, red is shown as vegetation, cyan tone and gray tones for built up areas. Now, even in the red, if you see different kinds of vegetation, these are bushes, etc. So different tone of red, grasses, lawns, etc. They give you a different tone of red. Tall trees, groups of trees, they give you a different texture and tone and so on. So we are able to make a distinction between these features. Now, quickly in the next 5-10 minutes, I will make you go through a few of samples of images. So you are made familiar with how different kinds of data set, which is varying in terms of spatial, spectral, radiometric resolution, etc., and what kind of information we are able to derive from these data sets. So if you see this is the water body. Here we see dry areas with this cyan tone. Water bodies extending here, red is all vegetation. Small water bodies here, ponds or reservoirs, etc. Then this is a fairly arid area wherein you see some portion of the channel with water. The other portions are lying dry. dry portions of the channel, and cyan tone again corresponds to dry sand. Red is vegetation. Now, this is a mid-infrared image. That means it has the thermal portion of the spectrum. And since this is a hilly feature with yellow, orange, bright spot here in the center, it's a volcano, the crater, and with the burning lava in the center. Right? Bare slopes, some vegetation which is shown in red, and at the base there is a cyan tone which could correspond to built up area here, some settlement. Then these circular features, if you see, these are indicative of sprinkler irrigation systems in dry arid region. So this is an image from Saudi Arabia, and since it is a desert region, we expect very dry climate here, scarcity of water. So sprinkler irrigation, so fields are used, so fields are made circular so that maximum amount of the water is utilized. Dark features indicate more moisture. Light feature, the red ones indicate have crop in them. These light toned ones are lying fallow. This has more moisture. This is drier. The darker portions indicate moisture, as I said. So because infrared region is going to, infrared wavelengths are going to be absorbed, right? Suspended material seen, and as the depth of water increases, it becomes darker. Be seen in the next image. The delta region, the shape itself indicates that there are several rivers coming and depositing their silt here. Lot of suspended material. Darker portion again indicate presence of moisture or water. Here it is fairly dry. Hilly, mountainous region, very bare, rocky terrain, very, very sparse vegetation. Urban areas, so here you see built up areas. This is a stadium. The shape indicates that it is a stadium. This is an air strip. Vegetation, built up areas. Also here, water bodies, agriculture areas, both fallow and with crop, built up areas, airstrip, and so on. Bare ground. These two images indicate, this is an image which is of medium resolution from the SPOT series of satellites. This is a French series of satellites. Now, if you see here, the ripples on the water surface can be seen. And this is the beach front. So you see the sand and suspended material near the land water boundary. Since it is medium resolution, not much detail in terms of the individual buildings, etc., are seen, but red features correspond to vegetation, since it is a standard false color composite, not a true color composite. Some water body, right? Bare ground and built up areas also. Another linear water body in land here. Now, this is a very high spatial resolution. So spatial resolution is sub-meter, that is 70 centimeters, less than a meter. Very, very high spatial resolution. So you can see the amount of details that you can see here. Individual buildings, chimneys, etc., chemical tanks, etc., are all seen. The smoke coming out of the chimneys is also visible. And there is a shadow cast. Beneath the shadow, we are not able to see distinctly or clearly what features might be. Right? So when you compare spatial resolution of this with this, we are able to see much greater detail in the higher spatial resolution image. But we are able to see a larger area in this medium resolution image. So depending upon the application, we will choose the kind of data Then two dates, pre-event and post-event images. So in the first image, the building, if you see, is intact. The boundary is intact. Then in the second image, some portion of the image, the building has been damaged over here. So you see these portions, the damaged areas are easily distinguished, whereas here it is not damaged. So temporal variation, if we have two time images, we can assess change. Change detection is possible. So we can, use these kind of temporally varying data to do change detection analysis. Also, in addition, you are also able to see parking lots, etc. So, yes, vehicles parked on the designated areas. Other features like buildings and roads and markings on the roads and flyovers, etc., are also visible. High spatial resolution, vehicles moving on the roads, etc. Then these four images, if you see here, the first image gives us a lot of information about textural variations. So agricultural fields in different stages, some lying fallow, some being freshly plowed, some having some vegetation at different stages of growth, trees, etc., with different textural elements. Now, these white features here are windmills. If you see, there is a shadow visible. The shape of the windmill fans is not visible on the in the object itself, but at certain locations where the angle of the sun is suitable, we are able to see and identify the triangular fan. These are sand dunes, the second one and the third one. These are longitudinal dunes and these are crescent shaped dunes. So we will be able to make an assessment of the movement, of the direction of movement, etc. if we have the wind directions also. Mountainous areas here. Now these three features show white, bright features, similar reflectance, but geographically different locations and hence different features. Now this is a white feature near the sea. So these are salt pans in the Gulf, in the Gujarat area, Gulf of Kutch, and salt pans, very bright. So it means that this feature is reflecting almost all the energy incident upon it. Glaciers in the Himalayas, so snow, again very white and bright. So bright reflectance, high reflectance. These are clouds. Clouds are associated with a shadow. And in the visible wavelengths, these cause occlusions and no data is visible under the cloud and its shadow. So this puffy cotton wool like texture is cloud. All of them similar reflectance is shown, these features, but they are different features based on the other elements of interpretation. Now, in terms of wavelength, cloud covered images don't give us much information under the cloud, especially if this poses a problem, especially in the tropical regions where we have extended monsoon periods, and if we use only the optical region or the visible portion of the spectrum, sometimes we are not able to get much information. In such cases, microwave data is a very useful tool, and we can use that data because microwaves are able to penetrate through cloud, smoke, fog, etc., and give us information in these areas. Now, this is a brick kiln, so you are able to see a chimney, baked bricks in stacks, and excavated area. Here, built up areas, very densely built up area or a slum area, so no pattern. Here, we are able to see a pattern. This is a railway station. We are able to see the railway tracks, a stadium here, roads, flyovers, industrial area here. So several built up features of different kinds. Well planned, high rise buildings, etc. are seen here. Again, very high spatial resolution. So you see the vehicles, maybe air conditioning units and water storage units, etc. on the rooftops, markings on the roads, road dividers, etc. Right, are all visible here. Very high spatial resolution. Industrial setup here again a very high spatial resolution. Now, at your leisure, you can use this image to make an interpretational exercise and see if you are able to interpret all the features that I've marked out here, and also make a list of the elements that you would use to make a distinction, right? I will flip through this right now. Now, manual versus digital interpretation. Since you have not had an exposure to the digital system, I will just quickly rush through this. After the next session, you will probably be able to make more sense of this comparative analysis. Basically, what happens is that manual interpretation and analysis dates back to the early beginnings of remote sensing, and digital analysis came only with the advent of the development of computers and digital recording systems for data. Manual interpretation requires very little specialized equipment. However, it does require training of analysts. On the other hand, digital systems require special hardware and software and some equipment, of course, to be able to assess the data digitally. Manual interpretation is often limited to analyzing a single channel or a combination of channels which are fixed when we take a printout or a photographic output. Using the computer environment, we are able to do or handle more complex images easily. Manual interpretation is a subjective process, meaning that the results will vary with different interpreters slightly. Digital analysis, since it is based on manipulation or handling of numerical values in terms of digital numbers and in a computer, and this is more objective, so this results in more consistent results. But however, this does not at all indicate whether the results are correct or not. So always the determining of the validity and accuracy of the results from a digital classifier is done in comparison to a reference, and the best reference is always a visually interpreted output. So when we are doing accuracy assessment of a digital classification, we do it with the help of a reference system. So for example, the features that we saw in the previous images, like shadows and water. So since they reflect similarly, the digital classifier is more likely to make a misclassification if it uses only the element of tone. However, a human interpreter is less likely to make that mistake. Similarly, built-up areas and sand, so they are also similarly reflecting features, right? So it is important to stress that visual and digital analysis of remotely sensed imagery are not mutually exclusive. In most cases, we do a mix of both methods, and while we are analyzing the images, and the ultimate decision of the utility and relevance of the information which we extract or which we are able to extract at the end of the interpretation or analysis process, the ultimate decision still rests with human interpreters. So misclassifications are corrected, etc. These kind of activities are all done by human interpreters. However, digital classification does speed up the process, and it lets us handle more data more quickly. So with this, I come to the end of the presentation. We have 10 more minutes, I believe. If people have questions, I will be happy to take them now.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for a very effective and endearing presentation.
Thank you so much.
Moving ahead to the question and answer session.
Sure.
If you guys have any questions, you can directly interact with the ma'am, or you can use the raise your hand option available in your control panel. So if there is anyone who wants to ask something from ma'am. Do we have any questions?
If you wish to go through the presentation, I could send this as a PDF to Dr. Seema, and the candidates, the participants can go through it, and then you could send me a compiled question bank or some, I mean, the questions that they have or queries that they have to the email that I have listed here. That can also be done. I understand that it is a new subject for them. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, thank
Sure,
you, madam. Is there anybody want to ask some?
Questions?
Please unmute
Actually,
your audio and can.
Actually, it's a new subject for them, I understand. So they may probably want to assimilate it better, and they can come back to me also. Not